right, welcome into the Hoist the Colors podcast. It is the best time of year. Conference tournament week, postseason college baseball is here. I'm Stephen Igo, the host of the podcast, publisher of hoistthecolors.net, joined as always by Jonathan Wagner and Scott Lowerbatcher, who's back on bottom. Unlike Friday's show, 94-3 the game, we were all on an equal playing field. But guys, this is the show we've been waiting for. Can't wait to get into this. When we have a few more people join, I'll wait a few minutes, but we're going to have a contest, and we're going to give out some free VIP subscription, potentially, if anybody can make some correct predictions. But as always, we're live on YouTube, we're live on Twitter, we're live on Facebook. I just want to say I went back and noticed last week on Twitter that some people were leaving comments. We do not get the Twitter comments, so please, if you have a comment, drop it on YouTube or Facebook. It comes through our StreamYard that way. So if you want to participate in the contest or get your question read, please join us on YouTube and Facebook. Not that I have disrespect for Twitter, but that's just the way it is. Well, guys, we got a lot to discuss. We'll talk about the conference tournament, what it means for ECU's hosting, possibilities. But first off, Scott, we could finally say ECU is regular season champion. It went down to the wire, a lot closer than past years, but once again, ECU finishes the American on top in the regular season.
Yeah, it's a great feeling to be a champion, and you can be a champion too if you share the stream on Facebook. Go ahead and do that. But
well done.
Yeah, waited to the end. Glad we got to play that morning game and get a little baseball and coffee in before I actually had to get off to Winston-Salem to go to a baby shower. So that's another thing. But, conference champions for the fourth straight year have won either the regular season or the tournament in 5 consecutive seasons. Kind of a weird year this year where Houston doesn't lose a single conference series, beats every team in the conference, and we still end up conference champs. But when you break up the brooms like the Pirates have done this year, that's kind of how it goes. And every game matters. And every game mattered this year more than most.
The power of the broom. It overcomes 2 series losses, including the team that ECU lost head-to-head with to beat them out by half a game. We'll never know if they would have played that third Wichita State game, if they would have tied ECU and won the share of the crown or not. But Jonathan Wagner, you're following the Canes game. You're multitasking. So give us a Canes update and also discuss your thoughts on the Pirates conference regular season title. I think we all predicted it in the preseason, but I don't think anybody really predicted Houston to be right there all along.
Yeah, well, first of all, the Canes are 0-0. And if I'm remembering correctly, every time we've done this season where I've multitasked with the Canes, I'll just say it's gone well. So I'm hoping to God that happens again tonight. But as for ECU, I think it was just this past week it was kind of a roller coaster, I think, coming off the Campbell loss. I think to me, I was kind of like, oh, well, the hosting chances are done. But then you kind of get into the weekend and you win Thursday and then you win Friday. And I wake up on Saturday and I'm kind of like, all right, we've got a shot. And for the first time, I think for me in a couple of weeks, I really started to feel like, it's possible. And I think just looking back on the season as a whole, winning the regular season, and we've talked a lot about this year about how the American isn't really that good. There's not a lot of great teams, but in the end, ECU had to scrape its way to a regular season conference title. And I've mentioned this before, but there has not been one single game this season where ECU has been fully healthy, whether it's Ryan McChrystal's back, whether it's Trey Savage, whether it's Justin Wilcoxon's back, or so on, Jacob Starling lately. The list goes on really through almost every player on the roster. So the fact that they have been able to accomplish what they have this season, I think is really impressive, and they deserve to be praised for that. So I'm glad they finished on top in the regular season, but now the work's just getting started.
The numbers are popping on our stream, YouTube, Facebook Live. So I'm going to go ahead and throw this out there now before we dive into the questions. All right, here's the deal. 3 free months of VIP on the line if you can correctly guess what ECU's regional destination will be next Monday. So what I need is, if you think ECU is going to host, you need to give me what overall seed you think they'll be. If you think they're going to go on the road to a road regional, where do you think they're heading? Obviously, to what destination and to what team? Clearly it's probably going to be the same. Obviously, Conway, Coastal Carolina, Durham, Duke, Columbia, South Carolina, if they even host Wake Forest, Winston-Salem, et cetera. So that's what I need. And for the people that get it right, if you just say ECU host and you don't give me a number, I can't count that. And then I do need the exact location. If you think ECU is going to be a 2 seed, where do you think they're going? So give us that information in the chat. And at the end of the show, I'll write them all down. And then next week, we'll see if anybody gets it right. And if so, you'll get 3 free months VIP subscription. All right, guys, let's get into it. We got a ton of questions already. We might be here a while, which is awesome. We already got some people talking about the conference tournament or the conference all-conference snub. So let's get into that discussion to start off with. Somebody says, the Josh Moylan, how does he not get first team? The disrespect. So you got several situations here. You got Josh Moylan, who should have been first team somewhere. I guess the Justin Murray kid got it from Houston, who's got great numbers. And he probably needs to be a first team pick. I guess the issue is he's kind of like a two-way guy. So could they not have stuck him at utility or something and given Josh Moylan first team first baseman? I don't know. I honestly haven't looked too hard at the list, but Josh Moylan deserves to be a first teamer. The other one, of course, Danny Beal and Wyatt Lunsford-Chinkman deserve recognition. I thought we were talking off air prior, guys. It's hard for relievers to get that love. Was that you, Scott, or you, Wags, who made that point?
Yeah, that was me. They only had one relief pitcher on the first team, so it's kind of like, if you're only going to have one spot, it makes it really tough.
Yeah, it's just, and I'm not a huge fan of the conferences that give out like 3-4 teams. Like at that point, you're just throwing everybody a bone. So I like the fact they do 2 teams, 2 all-conference teams, and a freshman team. Like Phil Steele does like 8 preseason all-conference teams just to get as much headlines as possible, and it works. But, at the end of the day, ECU got 11 players on the all-conference team, which is a program record, WAG. So did you have any big issue with anybody being left off? And it was still a good representation. It's hard to get every single thing right.
Yeah, I mean, the second team all AAC is pretty much purple. And, you love to see that. You love to see the recognition, but I do think it's tough for Danny Beal and Wyatt Lunsford-Chinkman. But personally, I'm more surprised by Wyatt Lunsford-Chinkman just because I feel like he was more consistent throughout the season. He had a really hot start, and even when he cooled off a little bit and he got hit around a little bit, his numbers stayed looking pretty good. Danny Beal, on the other hand, he had a slow start. It wasn't until the year when he kind of turned it on. But you can't deny what he did down the stretch. And personally, I think I would have probably flipped Josh Moylan and Jacob Jenkins-Cowart. I think I probably would have Josh Moylan on the first team in that DH role, and you squeeze JJC in on the second team. I just think Josh Moylan was a little more consistent this year. But, it's nice seeing that much recognition, and it's deserved. The guys that are on there deserve it for ECU, but it's tough to get everyone in. There's going to be snubs every year, but let's be real. At the very least, we're not talking about a Thomas Francisco type of snub like we were a few years ago. So that's a plus.
And I think was it Jenkins-Cowart that got left off last year?
Yeah, it was him last year, and Moylan the year before that, and I think Francisco was the season before that because it was the year that the season didn't happen, and then 2019 was Francisco, I believe.
There's always one, and hey, but that person usually has a pretty good conference tournament, so looking forward to seeing Josh Moylan hit 5 homers. Looking forward to Danny Beal once again going 6 1/3, scoreless baseball, and Wyatt Lunsford-Chinkman is definitely getting the save to clinch the conference championship. All right, let's get into the questions. Brandon Carr says, "What's up, fellas? My bad. I missed y'all the past few weeks." Yeah, Brandon, you've been slacking, man. What do you think I'm drinking? Austin Carl Voss says, "Do y'all think it's as simple as we win the conference tournament and host, or need a little help as well?" All right. This is the theme of the podcast. We'll get into it. Is the conference tournament title do or die for ECU to host? Such a long discussion. Again, there's so many factors in play, and we could talk about this for an hour in itself. But I think for ECU to assure itself a hosting spot, they have to win the championship. I don't think 45-15 double champ ECU is going to get denied no matter how strong the hosting bubble is. I just don't think you can say, hey, we're going to send 45-win ECU to a road regional like that. I just don't think that's going to happen. So To assure it, I think they do have to win it. And if they do win it, I just don't think they can get denied. Before I get too deeper into the discussion, I'll get y'all's take. We'll start with Scott. Your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think like you said, 45-15, and a team that's hosted 4 straight years, it would be hard to turn down. But yeah, and if we don't win the conference tournament, you are going to have to hope that these fringe SEC teams and ACC teams that are maybe borderline hosts, the Dukes, Boston Colleges, South Carolinas, Tennessees, you got to hope they're 2 and through or 1 and done, depending on their conference tournament. You better hope that DBU and Indiana State fall out quickly, even Campbell. And then if Southern Miss or Indiana makes a run to their conference championship, then you may still be on the outside end. So the surefirest way to be a host is to win it all. And even then, I think you still want to kind of scoreboard watch, and you don't want a South Carolina or maybe an Alabama to run through the SEC tournament, get to the finals, or win it all, because then I think they're hosting. And as that bubble starts to get smaller and smaller, the resumes get more and more difficult to stack up against.
It would be absolute chaos, and I don't really want this to happen, but if somehow ECU won the American tournament, Dallas Baptist won the Conference USA tournament, Southern Miss won the Sun Belt tournament, Indiana State won its tournament. If you had all that happen, Campbell winning this tournament, I don't know what the committee would do. All that's probably not going to happen. But I think, honestly, they'd be forced to squeeze out some of these SEC, ACC teams like Boston College, or SEC teams that are on the bubble like South Carolina, as well as Alabama, et cetera. So definitely keep your eye on those games. We'll get into maybe some of the games to watch that have potential impact on ECU. But Jonathan, do you feel if ECU wins the conference tournament, they will host a regional?
I'm not confident enough to say that, just because I don't know what the committee is going to value this year. And we can look at all the numbers we want, but in the end, I think and to the original question, do I think the conference tournament is for hosting is win it or bust? I do. I do think if ECU falls short of winning it, and I think winning it out of the winner's bracket, I don't think ECU has a path to host personally. But on the other side, I do think if ECU, even if ECU does win it, they win it out of the winner's bracket, they go 45-15. I still think you have to scoreboard watch. I still don't think that's a guarantee. And let me just clarify this. If I was making a bracket based on my personal beliefs, as unbiased as I possibly could be, which I'm obviously a little biased, but just looking at the resume, ECU 45-15, double champion, the American, that's a hosting caliber resume for me. And I just lost my track of thought just because there's so many different factors that could happen here. But would I have ECU as a host, as a double champion, pretty much regardless of what else happens across the country? Yes, I would. But it doesn't work how I want it to, and it doesn't work how I think it should. So I think we're scoreboard watching pretty much no matter what.
So ECU last year, I'm trying to do this on the fly here. How many wins did they finish with in the regular season, guys? Do y'all have that number?
Yeah, 1 second. I had it right here. They went, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So take 8 off 38 wins in the regular season.
So 38 wins in the regular season. Obviously, they swept the conference tournament. That made it 42. So, we're talking about an ECU team with 41 wins now. And I do think the hosting bubble is much stronger this year. But, last year ECU went 2-7 top 50. This year they're 4-6, and that's not a good number. But I think, it just comes down to what is the committee going to value? Like, we don't know. Last year it was non-conference strength of schedule, which for whatever reason is not being discussed a whole lot. Like when you listen to the Nerdcast from D1 Baseball and these guys, and listen, they do a great job. But they're guessing just like we are. At the end of the day, they don't really know. They're pointing to the top 50 metric a whole bunch. Well, last year the committee valued conference championships and non-conference strength of schedule. Well, if they're going to do that again, ECU's non-conference strength of schedule is 13, non-conference RPI 10, overall strength of schedule 53. So I think the metrics are there based on last year, and you do have several of the same committee members. It's just a matter of, are they going to just up and change their mind if they want more SEC host over teams like ECU and Indiana State that have really good non-conference strength of schedule? So at the end of the day, we can debate all this, and that's what we're doing because it's fun. But ECU's got to win. It's that simple. They got to put themselves in a position to where they can't be denied, and you do that by winning the conference tournament. I personally think they won't be denied if they're 45 and 15, 16, whatever, and have 2 conference championships with the reputation of the school. But it's the NCAA. Nothing would surprise me. So any other thoughts here before we continue on with some further questions?
Yeah, I know RPI has been discussed a lot. We were 25th in the RPI going into the conference tournament last year and ranked 23rd. And I think we had at that point won like 14 games in a row. And then we finished off with, an 18-game win streak that ended in the regional round. But, I mean, we did have a big badge with the nation's longest win streak last year that we're not going to obviously have this year. So maybe the difference in 7 wins is enough to make that up. But as far as RPI, I know I've seen a lot of people talk about that. But if we win all 4 of our games in the conference tournament and other teams lose and don't have games to play, then it should come up some. I don't think it'll get to – I think we ended last year at like 8 or something like that. But I don't think it'll get that high. But it should be better than what it is now.
Yeah, I think top 20 with 2 conference titles, you feel pretty good. If for whatever reason it sticks in the mid-20s, it's a little worrisome. But hopefully it just sucks the American is such a bad RPI league. But all those teams are still pretty grouped together. So if you get some losses in front of you, that's going to – you're going to leap them as long as you win and hold ground. All right, let's move on. The way he drew it up says to Chris in the chat, it's a fine line between being a politician and doing coach speak during post-game interviews, but I particularly appreciated Cliff Godwin's interview after that Campbell loss. I mean, Cliff, yeah, he was – I felt like he was very fair after that game. He was pissed at the defense, basically, for making some errors and said it was a great game. I don't know if he said it was a great game, but it was a crazy game. We haven't really talked about that. We didn't even talk about that much on Friday, guys, but that's a game I'll always remember. I know that y'all probably feel the same.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I started off the game I was in my apartment watching it before I got off work, and I actually ended up at Sub Dogs for the end of it, just since the game kind of dragged on for almost 4.5 hours, which you haven't seen that this year. But yeah, it was a back and forth game. It was a game that was full of defensive miscues, some great offense, some not so great pitching on both sides, but then also some clutch pitching in some moments. And you never knew what was happening. It was every inning you had a different vibe, and you got to the end, and it was kind of a crushing loss a little bit for me just watching it there. It was a postseason game. That's what it was. And I mean, the loss definitely sucked, but I agree. It was definitely one of those games. I'm going to remember that one for a while. And I think all those Campbell games were so close every game this year. And just losing that one, it was a real heartbreaker, especially the way that it kind of happened. But there's just a thrilling aspect of it. It was kind of a glimpse into the postseason because, in case you're not aware, that's how I think most games are going to be once you do get into the postseason.
And Scott, we've had this conversation a lot, but it's just like, what if, man? What if ECU could have won even one of those Campbell games, but certainly 2? What if they could have won the NC State game or the other UNC game? It feels like those were such huge swing RPI games, and unfortunately, that's why ECU is where they are right now in the mid-20s.
7 of our top 50 games were 1-run games, and we went 2-5. Obviously, we won the 2 UNC games early in the year. And then 5 losses, and I think 3 of those on the road, 2 at home, all to in-state teams. And, looking back at last year, I don't think we had a single 1-run loss in the top 50 losses that we had. So, I would hope that when the committee is comparing teams, they're looking at not just, they had 6 top 50 losses. They're like, okay, well, they lost of the 6, they lost 5 of them by 1 run. Maybe then you look at Indiana State and see that their top 50 games weren't as close, or Dallas Baptist and their games weren't as close either. Where a ball that just stays up on the center fielder gets caught instead of goes over his head or whatever it might be that can turn the game on a dime. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of what ifs this season for a team that still won 41 games.
If you're just joining us, we announced earlier we're having a contest for our viewers. If you're live streamers only, guess in the comments section on YouTube or Facebook where you think ECU will be this postseason. If you think they'll host, let us know you think they'll host and what overall seed they'll be. If you think they're going to be on the road, what seed? Yeah, probably a 2 seed, obviously. But where do you think they'll go for the regional? If anybody correctly guesses it, you get 3 months free VIP. All right, back to the comments. Dave Englert says, how do we feel about the "it's tough to beat a team 4 times in a row" mantra? And guys, if ECU, they haven't lost to anybody in their side of their bracket. So if they're going to make it to the conference championship, obviously they could do so in the losers bracket. But if they're going to have a clean sweep, they're going to finish the year undefeated against Cincinnati, UCF, and obviously USF. How do we feel about the "it's tough to beat a team 4 times in a row" mantra? We'll start with Jonathan. What do you think as far as this rematch against South Florida?
Yeah, I think that's a very valid comment, and I'm a firm believer in that. It is very hard to beat a team 4 times in a row. It's hard to beat a team 6 times in a row, though, and ECU did that to Cincinnati. Cincinnati's a different team than South Florida, and I think it adds a little more pressure this time because I think tomorrow against South Florida is the most important game in the tournament for ECU. Winning that first game is everything. If you lose that game, you play again on Wednesday, and then your whole pitching situation just gets kind of thrown because then you might have to move guys up on short rest, which I don't like moving stuff around if you don't have to going into a regional type atmosphere. So I think beating a team 4 times in a row is very, very hard. And I think USF, they showed that they can play ECU close this weekend. So it's not going to be a breeze by game. So if you're expecting that, I think you're going to be disappointed. But it's going to be a tight game, and it's a very important game, and it's one that I think ECU really has to win.
All right, Chris Allen says, if ECU wins the conference tournament and we don't get a hosting spot, does the NCAA hate having 6,000 fans on TV for college baseball and growing the sport? I'm not going to get into conspiracy theories here. Look, the NCAA last year, I thought ECU a big favor with the national seeds, so I don't think we can complain but so much. But I will be the first to say, if ECU wins the conference tournament, and assuming the scenario we ran over earlier doesn't happen, and if they don't get a hosting spot, I'll be the first to call them out. I'm sure that Scott will be tweeting at Kendall Rogers and Clemson fans. You've been stirring it up on Twitter lately, Scott.
Somebody's got to do it.
Yeah, but I've been enjoying that. But yeah, I think, look, if ECU, we'll see what happens. But again, if they put themselves in that position, it's going to be very tough. The NCAA makes a good amount of money on that as well. So we'll see what happens. I don't think Indiana State's bringing in 6,000 fans, nor Duke, unless they just want to send ECU to Duke's regional. General thoughts on D1's projection. Sam Anderson, former Hoist the Colors legend, chiming in. We can get in this discussion quickly, guys. ECU, by the way, going to Auburn. I don't think anybody has guessed that in the comments section. So if that comes true, I'll be keeping the 3 free months of VIP. Do we think there's any chance they end up at Auburn?
No. I think I don't know. It's so tough to say. Just as you still don't know who's hosting. I feel like a team like South Carolina is looking more and more likely if South Carolina holds on to host. And as we talked about before, I do every Monday I do my projections. And I do my full field of 64. And today I kind of went through the conference tournament and I used what I think is going to happen in those conference tournaments to build my projections. And mine ended up it was very similar to D1. I think we had 63 of the 64 same teams, I was shocked.
You're basically an expert.
That's what I'm hearing. I know, but in my projection, I had South Carolina as the 16 seed. I think they're going to win a couple games, but I think other teams elsewhere are going to win a couple games. So I had ECU in South Carolina's regional, which was the 16th, which who knows, but But I think general thoughts, I just think the bubble to host is very strong this year, and the bubble to get in the tournament is very, very weak. And I struggle to come up with teams to put into my field, like in that 60th spot, 61st spot, down to 64. So I think that's I think the script might be flipped a little bit compared to what it was last year, like Steven mentioned earlier, where it's just it's so tight in the 16, the 12 to 24 range. I feel like is very neck and neck. So there's a lot that can happen. It's a tight race, but it's not a tight race to get in. But for ECU, it's very tight. But yeah.
Scott, did anything stand out about the D1 baseball projection to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at that pocket there of, the 12th seeded Auburn and 5th seeded Stanford, you see both us and UNC across from each other as 2 seeds. I think both of us could potentially win our regionals if that scenario happens. And then you're looking at a bid off to host either in a super in Chapel Hill or a super in Greenville, which would be, I think, pretty fun, that discourse. But Auburn is just 14 games over 500 this year. They're 33-19-1. Wake Forest is 15 games over in their league. So that's a little perspective on that. But, I have a hard time with teams under 35 wins hosting. So to me, I think Auburn would need to win a couple games in Hoover to get to a host spot. I know there are RPIs there, but it seems like this year in particular, the D1 guys are really hung up on RPI and top 50 wins. And I think it's human nature to be a little contrarian. And with the kind of the whole RPI thing the last few years with the committee, where teams are now starting to, just obviously duck opponents at the end of the year to help their RPI. Maybe they dial back the reliance on RPI this year and start looking at things like, maybe road record, which wouldn't help ECU, but I think is a fair metric. The human polls, maybe they have a factor. ECU is pretty well represented there, except for the one we don't talk about. And then, your last 15, your last 20 games, which is favorable to ECU and not favorable to a team like South Carolina, who has lost 4 consecutive series in the SEC.
Yeah, I'm just looking at Auburn, and they have finished strong, but they've benefited from playing some weaker teams. Ole Miss, Missouri, they've won 6 straight SEC games. They actually won 8 straight. They took the series over LSU, took the series from South Carolina. They have won 5 straight SEC series, but again, 33 wins is light. That's light to me. If they lose to Missouri in the first round of the SEC tournament, I like you said, is a 33-20-1 team really going to host, especially as a 12 seed? Right. I guess they're projecting Auburn to make a run.
Yeah, but I think I'm glad you just mentioned that comment about playing the SEC teams, because I look at a team like Kentucky, who struggled a little bit early. They still finished with a pretty good, I think, 16 SEC wins, but Kentucky was in that same boat a couple months ago or a month ago, where they, I think, were on pace. If they would have lost the series, I think it may have been Vanderbilt, but if they would have lost that one, it would have been 7 straight SEC series losses. And at that point, Kentucky was not a host. And now that Kentucky ended the season on a high note, they're right there. But then you look at Auburn, that's just how the schedule played out. They played the tough teams early, and they played the really crappy teams late. And there are some really crappy teams in the SEC at the bottom in the basement there. So yeah, I think it's recency bias. That plays a factor, but just playing that type of schedule, it's tough, and it's all about timing. And for Auburn, they're peaking at the right time. I agree. Again, if I'm making my projections based on my personal beliefs, I don't have Auburn as a host. But if I'm going based on what I think will happen, just for that reason, I think they're getting in, and I don't agree with it.
Yeah, if Auburn makes it to like the SEC tournament weekend and they're playing in the semifinals, I'm all for it. 17 wins in the SEC is no joke. But again, if they, for ECU's sake, hopefully they go out and stumble tomorrow and ECU takes care of business. But it just feels like there's so much that can swing. Like if South Carolina goes on a run, they could go from being on the hosting bubble to back to being cemented in. It's just there's a lot to watch there, which we'll get into maybe here in a little bit. All right, back to some of the comments. Christian Bateman says, do you think ECU will do anything differently heading into tomorrow? He says, does Nate Christman stay in the batting lineup? If By the way, Christian, good to meet you at the last home game. Some dude walked up to me after the Campbell game and was like, "Hey, do you know who I am?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "I'm Christian Bateman." I was like, "All right, man, good to put a name to a face." So appreciate all your comments on Twitter and the live stream, Christian. I think with Starlin back in, guys, Chrisman is still going to be that same guy off the bench. Do y'all anticipate anything different tomorrow? It sounds like South Florida will again throw Siebert, who we saw on the Thursday game when Root started, pitched pretty well early, but hittable right-handed guy. I think we'll see Nolan Hootie first out of the bullpen, I would assume, for the Bulls. But do y'all anticipate anything differently tomorrow?
I think probably not, as in your 9 men in the rotation. But I'll be interested to see if, for the first time I think ever this past weekend, we saw Jacob Jenkins Cowart play left field, and I thought he looked good out there. He didn't make any mistakes out there, I didn't think, that I saw. So I'll be interested to see if that sticks and Luke Nowak stays at DH, or if that flips back and I want to see how that kind of flips around, especially as the tournament goes on and you start playing more and more games. But other than that, I don't anticipate anything.
Yeah. Go ahead, Scott.
I think that's a good point. JJC in left field instead of right, that allows you to keep Cunningham in right and have Nowak DH. Maybe we'll see Starling move back up the lineup. I don't know how healthy he is now. If he's feeling a lot better, maybe you see him back in the 2-hole instead of the 9-hole. But I think it's your 9 main guys that have kind of rode the end of this season. So I think you stick with them, especially in game 1, because you got to win that one.
Good chance we'll see a big Cam Claunch pitch hit at some point. I mean, that dude has gotten every big pinch hit opportunity and, by the way, has delivered more times than not, whether it be with a walk. His patience in those at-bats is great. He seems to always not be too amped up, which is very hard to do as a pinch hitter. So I guess I'll have to predict another Cam Claunch big spot in our bold predictions at the end of the show. JPN says the Campbell loss, if we are not hosting, will be the reason why we are on the road. Yeah, I mean, I think all 3 losses, not just the most recent one. But again, I think there's a way to overcome that. We got into that discussion. It'll just be really interesting to see what the committee does if both Campbell and ECU sweep their conference tournaments and have like the same resume. Is it possible they both host? I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends on what other teams do, but we'll see. Let's see here. Chuck says if we win the tournament, I think we're a 16 seed, win it, play Wake for the right to go to Omaha. I'm not gonna lie, guys. I know Wake Forest is nasty. I'm not gonna get back on the Wake Forest hate train. But there's, if ECU is towards the bottom of the hosting mix, if they win the tournament, I would rather be matched up with Wake than Arkansas or Florida, some of these SEC teams. Am I crazy in saying that? What do y'all think?
No, I think you're right, because I think, Wake Forest hasn't been there the way some of the SEC teams have. I did see a mock draft by, I think, Baseball America or somebody like that had Rhett Lauder going to my Reds. So that would be kind of cool to get to see him play.
He's a stud.
It is the case. But the other thing is, in the last 8 tournaments, the 1 seed has only gone to Omaha 4 times. They've only won their regional 6 of those times, and then they've lost in the Supers 2 more times. So, I wouldn't think that just being a 1 seed automatically sends you to Omaha, and I don't want anyone else to think that either, because even last year, you look at a Notre Dame upsetting Tennessee on the road in Tennessee to send them home. And then the year before that, it was the same thing with NC State, who lost by 127 in game 1 to Arkansas and then came back and won the next 2 games, which I don't think I've ever seen a run differential that bad for a team that won a regional or super regional. But yeah, I don't think I've seen a lot of that. Well, if we have to play Wake, that's like a death sentence, and I don't think that's true at all. I think you're going to play a good team in the second round no matter what. So I'd much rather host and play Wake than be on the road for both rounds.
Yeah, for sure, and I think there's a good chance if there's a North Carolina team hosting that's not ECU, maybe they're the 16 seed and ECU's there, and you're in the same scenario. So I also wouldn't mind ECU being matched up with Stanford. I know that's a long trip if they win, but I think that's a winnable super. But yeah, anywhere in the SEC, I'm scared. I'm not gonna lie.
And I think too, if we go to a super regional in Wake, that's a home crowd for ECU, and I think going to an atmosphere like an Arkansas, Florida, and LSU potentially, that's something that we haven't seen before. Even going dating all the way back to Vanderbilt, I think those schools atmosphere wise are in a completely different stratosphere. So I think I think I'd rather have Wake, which it might sound crazy, but I think I'd rather that for those reasons.
All right, Chris Allen says our metrics are better than last year. We got an 8 seed, and we may not get a 16 seed this year. I'm not buying it. Several factors there. We talked about the hosting bubble. We talked about the 20-game win streak or whatever it was at the time, 18 or whatnot. So I think those two things really helped, and I also think just the way that things unfolded, and also the metrics the committee picked. So all that this year is different. And so you just don't know, and to give yourself the best chance possible, win the tournament, leave no doubt as much as possible. Michael Hackett says, any idea how Oregon State is being thrown around as a potential host solely because they are needing a second West Coast host? So Aaron Fitt, love the guy, talked to him. He is all about Oregon State. And I just want to say this, and y'all can have y'all's piece on it too. If you want to be considered a host for a regional as a West Coast team, don't schedule Coppin State and Western Carolina as your non-conference series. Oregon State didn't even win the Pac-12. They have the 236th non-conference strength of schedule, 30 RPI. If they host without winning the Pac-12 tournament, guys, I'm going to be upset whether it affects ECU or not. I just think just because of their location, they should not host. Thoughts, Scott?
Well, I think if they win the Pac-12 tournament, you're going to look at them playing a lot of top 50 RPI teams on a neutral site. So they probably would get back into the top 20. And then I think the consideration actually makes sense. But
yeah,
I do agree that if this was a Cal State Fullerton and the Big West, I think is the league they're in. But if that league was, a 2 or 3 bid league and they finished in second by 5 games and we're 30th in the RPI, there's zero chance we would be talking about. And it's all to do with the Power 5 label that has crept its way into college baseball. And I think before a second Pac-12 team gets a hosting bid, I'd rather just give a bid to the Big 12. If we're going to just go straight off Power 5, then let's let one of these Midwest teams that has to travel for the first month of the year, no matter what, have a host site, as opposed to just rewarding a team for being, historically a good program and just being in the middle of the West Coast because there's nobody else out there that has anywhere near deserving, metrics or anything like that.
Jonathan, did you consider Oregon State as a host in your projections?
Not even for a second. And I think, and I will say in previous weeks I have, and I've had them as a host previously, but just at this point with where they sit in the RPI, they're number 30 right now, according to Warren Nolan. But I think the other factor is we're all nuts when it comes to this. We all spend probably way too much time looking at
definitely
RPI and brackets and that, but it's that time of the year I love it. And like I project my field in my free time just for the fun of it. But I spend a lot of time on D1. I read pretty much everything they post regarding the tournament. I scroll Twitter looking for tournament talk, all that stuff. And over the past 2 weeks, really going into this past weekend, Washington started to get talked about as well. If Washington has a good end of the year, then, they could be that second West Coast host. And I'm like, that right there is what it should not be. It shouldn't be you need a second West Coast host. If you have a second team in the West Coast and they have a resume that's deserving of doing it, sure, they can host. I don't have a problem with it. But as it stands right now, Oregon State, 30th RPI, like you said, 236 non-conference strength schedule. Washington, 33rd RPI, 33 and 16 overall. 227th non-conference RPI. That you shouldn't host solely based on location, and it's the same conversation we've had with so many teams being right in the Carolinas, the Virginias area. Could that play a factor? It shouldn't. It should be about the best resumes and who deserves to get in there. And I think that's what it would be, but it's the same. You could keep going everywhere with this. Do you need a Northeast host? Do you need who's going to be your Texas host? Who's going to be the school out of there? If Texas host, does that knock Dallas Baptist out? Because you don't need that Texas host anymore. So it's kind of annoying, in my opinion, just looking at it like that, because that's not what it should be about, but it is.
Yeah, I mean, and the committee is human, so I'm sure that stuff comes up, and it's, I don't know, easy to say, hey, we need another West Coast host to send UC Irvine or whatever to if they can't go to Stanford. So I don't know. I mean, I'm sure those things come up, but at the same time, it should just be strictly the 16 most deserving teams. And to me, a team that has a 236 non-conference strength of schedule, they didn't even try. I mean, Coppin State in Western Carolina, you can get two teams from two East Coast teams that suck. We're on their non-conference schedule. Like, what are we doing, guys? So I don't think you reward them for that. By the way, this has nothing to do with anything, but when I did go to the Washington Huskies series years ago when ECU played them, ECU had just as many fans in Seattle, Washington at the game as Washington. So there shows you how much they care about college baseball in Seattle. Go Mariners.
Go Seattle University.
Go Seattle U. They probably had a better atmosphere. Sweet stadium, though. It's right on the sound, I believe. So it was cool. It's cool to see Bryant Packer just tear him up. Anyways, JPN says, making sure I don't skip any comments here. Oh, yeah, before we get to that, Johnny Robertson stat guy says the Pirates have currently won 23, Keith LeClaire shout out, consecutive AAC games in May. That's quite a run. Of course, dating back to last year, I assume. And so ran through it last year. Hopefully the Pirates keep it going through the conference tournament. JPN says cheer for Georgia over South Carolina, A&M over Tennessee, and Missouri over Auburn. And that gets underway tomorrow. Is that correct, the SEC tournament?
Yeah, I believe 10:30 Eastern tomorrow is Georgia and South Carolina. I think that's the first one.
I saw Georgia's getting back one of their stud pitchers.
Yep.
And so the first round of the SEC is single elimination, and then it goes to double elimination. So if you're an ECU fan, let's say I hate to say it, but if you're South Carolina, Tennessee, or Auburn, you lose on the first day, you're almost out of the hosting discussion just because it's so early in the week, and you just kind of eliminate yourself. So those are crucial games. If you're ECU, if two of those teams lose, I think you're in good, pretty happy. Of course, you got to take care of your business, but even if one loses, I think that's a decent day for Pirate fans.
Yeah, and if you're A&M, you have to win that game. I think if A&M loses, they might not make the tournament. So, they have a lot more incentive to play for. I think Georgia's pretty – I don't know if are they out completely?
They're
out.
They only have 11 SEC wins. I don't think they're in it.
Yeah, agreed.
Just going through the comments section, somebody says Justin Wilcoxon got snubbed. He was a second-team pick, could have been a first-team pick. Double Dylan Danny Beal got shafted. Definitely all-conference worthy. Shout out Danny Beal, ECU's potential MVP if you really break it down. Chris Allen says ECU makes it to Omaha this year, whether we host or not. Does Omaha – didn't he already ask this?
Yeah, I remember this.
I was like, wait a minute, is this deja vu?
He just wanted to make sure that we knew that he is still planning to burn down Omaha, Nebraska.
Chris, I just want to know, did you copy and paste this question from like 2 months ago, or did you just retype the same as that question? For those not on YouTube, he says, if ECU makes it to Omaha this year, whether we host or not, does Omaha get burned to the ground and they have to cancel the College World Series moving forward? Strong possibility for sure.
Valid question.
It is. It's completely valid. Chuck with a long question here. This may be more of an off-season topic. He says, before I forget, can you go over a list of players that are eligible to get drafted? I don't have the roster in front of me, but guys to worry about, Josh Moylan, I think, is probably gone. Josh Gross, Justin Wilcoxon, I would say, are probably your three best pro prospects.
Lanigan.
I think, is a junior. Jacob Starlin is a junior. And there's a couple more. Alec Makarevich. Yeah.
Carter
Cunningham. So those are kind of the guys who have eligibility left but have a good shot to be drafted. I would not expect Moylan back. I wouldn't expect Rose back. I wouldn't expect Wilcoxon back, just because, like, when you get to this point, if you're a player, you have to go when you have bargaining power. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense to come back. So we'll see. I don't want to speak for those guys, but I would not expect them back. And then the rest, we'll kind of see how it goes. Any thoughts there?
What about a guy like Tyler Brock? Could you see him just moving on from, kind of like Ben Terwilliger last year, a guy who played a lot of college baseball and might just be ready to get to the next thing?
Probably goes undrafted and gets a professional deal somewhere.
He throws hard enough, somebody will sign him.
I mean, not a lot of guys throw 96, 98, right?
Yeah,
right.
So he could definitely get the flyer. He could come back and say, I want to improve my stock, and he maybe could. He's just not going to get paid a whole lot because he'll be a senior, I think, at that point. All right. Luke Dover says, what is ECU's biggest weakness on the resume? I think we've kind of talked about this, but lack of marquee wins and RPI kind of go hand in hand. Scott, do you find any other black marks?
I would put RPI up there. And I would say a big road series win would be up there for me too. I know we won one game in Chapel Hill, but we didn't really challenge ourselves on the road out of conference, despite having a good out of conference strength of schedule. But on the weekend specifically, we didn't have a good road series win out of conference, or even, the UNC series is supposed to be home neutral road, and it didn't work out that way. So that's probably the biggest ick I have on our schedule right now.
All right. Cincinnati, according to Johnny Robertson, is currently 152 in the RPI. He says if they can beat UCF tomorrow, they would likely move up, which would give us 6 additional quad 3 wins. Hopefully that could give us a slight RPI boost. Who knows for sure? Yeah, who knows for sure? I mean, I think ultimately Cincinnati, the better they finish, the better it is for ECU, but also UCF's way higher in the RPI. So would you guys rather play UCF or play Cincinnati again for an RPI perspective? I don't know. I feel like you might could get more points from Cincinnati winning due to the amount of wins over them, but UCF's higher.
Yeah, so UCF's 110. If they beat Cincinnati, maybe they creep closer to that 100 mark, and you get, potentially, if you play them twice, 5 wins over a quad 2 team. Obviously, it's going to be tough because they'll have 2 wins and 2 losses. If they beat Cincinnati twice, maybe, and then ECU beats them twice, maybe they creep into that top 100. Obviously, it's so fluid with the teams around them. I think my preferred path would be South Florida, Central Florida, and then obviously Houston has the best RPI outside of us in the conference, so them at 98 or whatever they are as the final team in the championship.
Houston or Wichita? Who do y'all want revenge on more?
Well, if I'm looking at it on who do I think ECU matches better up against, I think it's Houston. Personally, I think Wichita can hit too well, and if we manage to get matched up with Peyton Tolley on the mound, then no, thank you. Give me Houston.
It's hard to beat a team 4 times.
I was about to say that with Cincinnati, well, UCF. Yeah. Back to Dave's comment, it's hard to beat a team 4 teams in a row too.
Yeah, well, we'd have to beat Cincinnati 37 games in a row or whatever it is now. But I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I personally, I'd rather play Houston again. I think Houston ECU won last time in the conference championship. It
happens like every year.
Yeah, it's been a lot, and they've gotten the better of us a few times. But hopefully, if we do play Houston, they lose a game, so they're on their second baseman pitching again, like they were last year before last.
Yeah.
So I'll take Houston personally.
Chris Allen with another comment, not repeating himself this time. He says, I just want to add this. No matter our seed or where we play, to hell with every other team. Let's get to Omaha. Well said. Look, and we're talking a lot about this hosting stuff because the fans want ECU to host, and it's a great conversation because there's so much unknown. But I'll say this: even if ECU goes 2-0 in the tournament, which I never think is the worst thing in the world as far as resting arms, and has to go on the road, depending on who they draw, I kind of like this ECU team even on the road to make a run. But we'll get into that when the time comes. The way he drew it up says great stats. Got 7 top RPI losses by 1 run.
Those 7 RPI or 7 top 50 games were decided by 1
Yes.
run. We lost 5 of them. So
2 and 5.
2 and 5 in 1 run, top 50 game.
He says the committee needs to get their magnifying glass out. I'm going to say this. There's no chance in hell the committee's looking at that close. I hope I'm wrong, but
Coach Hill would look at it
right.
that close.
Yeah.
You're not wrong.
The way he drew it up, we got the depth of pitching that we haven't had in the past regarding the 4 times in a row mantra. Yeah, I mean, I think ECU clearly has the best pitching depth in the league. Nobody in the league has a good bullpen, right? I mean, who has a good bullpen?
Nobody.
No, nothing.
ECU.
That's why there's no relief pitchers on the all-conference team.
I think it's disrespectful to ECU to even try to make an argument to anybody else.
Yeah.
Because the gap is that big.
What's the score to the Canes game? Somebody said 20 minutes ago Florida scored.
Yeah, it is 1-0 Florida. I believe second intermission now.
All right, we'll get you back for the third period. Most important, hockey. We got.
Hey, don't forget the third overtime.
Gosh, let's not go there again.
Please, no.
Vandy canceled the other night. Apparently, yet hours east, they play a game in Knoxville. Must have been a storm near Nashville. Yeah, I mean it's all RPI driven.
Yeah. The only team that's ever had the courage to say that it was because of RPI was Texas A&M.
Yeah.
That is true. And good for them for and it got them a national seed. Is that right?
Yeah. They that was last year, right? And they were 22nd in the RPI, and they were the 6th seed or something like that.
So if you go out and admit it, they just give it to you instead of dancing around it. All right, so we're going to see Nolan Hootie, I think, on Tuesday. I would be shocked if USF didn't throw him. Chris Lehman says Hootie pitched a handful of innings. I would imagine if they pitch Hootie, he won't pitch long. So that was Friday's game, correct? That he threw?
I got it right here.
Yeah, because Ethan Brown threw Saturday.
Yeah. Yep, Friday's game.
So 3 days rest, right? Saturday, Sunday, Monday.
He threw 95 pitches.
Yeah, 95.
6 innings, 95.
So that's a lot of pitches on 3 days rest, but he's going to throw in this game. If it's a close game, I would be stunned. Stunned. I mean, how could you not? He had ECU looking. I mean, all he threw was sliders and.
Let's be real. He's throwing 95 pitches again too.
He probably will.
That's just how it works.
You know,
yeah, stop tweeting at him because I saw some people tweeted at him. Just leave him alone.
Oh gosh, yeah, please.
don't piss him off. He's clearly a player that plays on emotion.
And yeah, he loves the fist pump after every single half inning. By the way, the USF closer hit Moylan. I hope that we get that rematch.
Yeah, I feel like Moylan's just itching to play them again.
Yeah. Claunch has the best eye on the team. The way he drew it up says he can draw a walk like no other. Yeah, he's had some great at-bats this year. Christian Bateman says best have a basketball pod next year. I'm planning on it. We're planning to get Kason Rameli on, our intern. He's a big basketball guy, so we're going to try and do kind of a weekly basketball podcast later this summer, fall. Trying to make sure we get
Christian saying you got to get him on. I think he wants to guest appear on the pod.
Christian, is that what
you've
you're
met
saying?
him in person
Christian?
now? You've met him in person.
I've met him. Maybe he wants to intern.
I think you have to.
We're going to add him to the list.
He's here every week. Why not?
Yeah, I mean, he's dedicated, man. He's always the first to ask a question, too. It doesn't matter if it's Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. He's the first, so appreciate it, Christian. Sam Anderson, Hoist the Colors legend. Saw Wake in person when they play at UNCW. They are legit, definitely lived up to the hype, but I do think they are beatable if you keep the bats in check. They can swing it. It'll be a tough matchup. If it comes to that, Dan Hunt, another former Hoist the Colors legend, man, we're all out today. I think there's definitely a scenario where ECU and Campbell both win their conference tourneys, and Campbell essentially blocks ECU from hosting a regional. I mean, maybe if it comes down to that last spot, guys, if you're the committee and it does, it's hard not to say Campbell's 3-0 record would surpass ECU. It's just, do they have the guts to say, screw Campbell, we want the money, give me the Greenville Regional again? What do y'all think about this scenario?
Yeah, I think it's definitely valid. Personally, I have Campbell a little bit further off the hosting just after losing the USC Upstate this past weekend. But it all depends on what Campbell does in their conference tournament. If they breeze through it, they're going to be in the discussion. And if it's down to ECU and Campbell, I think that Campbell does have the edge for that head-to-head alone. And obviously, it depends on where the RPI finalizes and stuff. But yeah, that's a valid comment. I think that's a real concern if you end up getting in that situation.
And sadly, I don't know what the whole Big South RPIs are, but USC Upstate is higher than any other team in ECU's conference besides ECU as far as the RPI. So Campbell could get more of an RPI bump than ECU, which is sad.
Yeah, I think the Big South was the 11th best league this year. Campbell's strength of schedule is significantly behind ECU's. They ended up with the same number of wins. Obviously, they have the head-to-head. They don't have a home stadium to host on, so that's kind of, that's going to be a difficult decision there. Obviously, they can play it in Fayetteville, but yeah, maybe you send Arkansas to Campbell since they also play in Fayetteville.
That would be confusing. Chris Allen says I did not copy it, and quite frankly, I forgot that I asked that question. Well, Chris, you must really want to burn down Omaha.
Or if it wasn't you, someone did.
Somebody definitely asked that exact same.
There's a theme.
It was 100% Chris Allen. If not, then I'll cancel the podcast. Will there be a Bucks on the Pond party house if we don't host at the regional location? Will Buck Wild provide the party favors? Josh Hill wants to ask. Buck Wild, where are you at? Lucy Jones, let us know. If he's hosting the party, I'll be there.
I'll be there too, 100%.
I will call the police and collect the reward.
Yeah, I'll probably be at the regional, honestly, but maybe I'll phone in.
I took that weekend off too. I'll probably be at the regional too. But
yeah.
Hey, Buck Wild, join us there.
All right. Kurt Cohn says a comment, not a question, is that as ECU baseball fans, we have a lot to be thankful for. In what's considered to be a down year, we are a definite 2 seed. At worst, and still potentially a 1 seed in Greenville, we have a great coach. I mean, well said, Kurt. At the end of the day, it's hard to complain too much. No matter what happens in the next week, and I'll be the first to say, I'll be the first to text you guys complaining about something during tomorrow's game. But then once we have time to let it sit, no matter what happens this week, ECU will be in postseason baseball. And that, my friends, is a lot better than it was the first few years after or before Cliff Godwin took over, when it was pretty miserable. So, yeah, not much to add. Great comment there. Chris Allen also wants to know, can I write him an excuse note for work so I can watch the game tomorrow? Yeah, let me know. Send me an email. I'll do my best. Let's get through some of these because we're getting close to an hour. Robert says, who are the potential tournament bids from the AAC? No, none.
No, zero. Houston's RPI 96, Wichita's RPI 101. If nobody from the American wins the tournament other than ECU, there is a negative chance that they make the tournament.
Zero
alone.
If a team outside of ECU wins the AAC tournament, that probably means NC State doesn't make the tournament. So every cloud has a silver lining.
There you go.
Stolen bid season. Yeah, nobody's getting an at-large except for East Carolina. Bradley says, why were the Camels our kryptonite? Would they beat us in a weekend series? I don't know.
Just I feel like it's a really tight matchup. Two very similar teams.
Two good teams, man. Like at the end of the day,
Campbell always has some dudes, whether it's in the bullpen or at the plate. They have some dudes. It's probably the best competition this year we faced, I think. So they're just legit. They always are. And I respect the hell out of them. And it was just a tough series. And they won the 3 games, I think, by 3 combined runs. So sometimes that's just how it is.
Their strength is our strength, right? Or their strength matches our strength. They're always going to be able to hit. We've pitched really well this year, and their pitching staff is a little weaker, but we were able to hit them. So, I mean, just 2 really good teams. I mean, 2 Omaha caliber teams, I would say.
Absolutely.
And at the end of the day, ECU lost 3 one-run games. Like a couple plays here or there, if make a catch, get a hit, ECU wins 2 out of 3. So I don't think we need to look at it any too much more than we have already. All right, Brandon Carr says, I go nice old school shirt. The background looks great. Thank you. Scott, you could have done a little better with your shirt this week. What is it?
This is my OG Bulldog Pride Butnerstone Elementary School shirt. First off, this shirt is like 20 years old. So this is from when I was at Butnerstone Elementary School. And I'm pretty sure my dad got it for some sort of field trip or something like that. And then he had a bunch of old shirts in a pile. And he was like, I'll throw these away if you want any. So I snagged some like old 49ers and red stuff. And then I saw this glorious Bulldog Pride shirt. I couldn't turn it down. It is purple and gold. So that's kind of cool. And it says Butner on it. So Butner Pirate.
That is pretty sick. He said you must have been the PTA president, and has IGO got you a HTC shirt yet? Funny you asked that. I did text Wags and Scott this week, and I said, what's your address and T-shirt size? Now, here's the catch is, am I really sending them a shirt, or am I just BSing with them further?
You know, that's true. He didn't give us a reason. He just asked for our address, and we kind of left it at that.
Yep.
I assumed it was some sort of Christmas card.
You'll find out. Maybe nothing will ever arrive. You never know.
Hey, I'm moving soon.
Yep. Well, then whoever takes over will get your
the next person to walk through that door.
Yeah. Whoever walks through that door next. Sam Anderson wants to know, will Omaha burn to the ground if ECU makes it?
What's up with y'all and burning things?
Stop burning.
Yeah, they're actually going to play the game at the old stadium, so
they're probably reading our chat, and the committee's going to ban us from going.
Is Rosenblatt still standing? That's the name of it, right? Blatt, whatever it is.
Rosenblatt.
Rosenblatt.
What's it now? TD Ameritrade?
Yep.
Disgusting.
Kurt Collins says if Campbell hosted Fayetteville, there would be plenty of ECU fans there. Absolutely. It would be an ECU home game. How hilarious would it be if Campbell got the number 1 spot, but we as the 2 hosted them in Greenville? It would be pretty hilarious outside the fact it'd be a tough regional win because Campbell could basically just throw off and then throw their guy whose name escapes me right now. But
Kohler.
Cade Kohler. So, yep. I think that would be a tough regional. I mean, Campbell hasn't seen you Savage or Groves. We haven't seen Kohler this year, so that kind of sums it up. Would be interesting regional, though. Sam Anderson, again, Big South says the double elimination 4-team tournament could get a Campbell Upstate rematch day 2 of the tournament. So this is where the Big South is just as smart as the American, or smarter, because they're just doing the top 4 teams, therefore going with the top 4 RPI teams, whereas the American is making ECU play South Florida again, which does nobody any favors.
No.
So that's Campbell, South Carolina Upstate, who is RPI 88, Gardner Webb, who is RPI 150, and I guess they'll start off with Winthrop, who is RPI 154. Let's see here. And we would play USF, whose RPI is 175. So, yeah, I do agree, though. I think the 4, really only 4 teams should make the tournament and just do a regional weekend style tournament. Even that is kind of like excessive in my book. As much as we love to clown on the ACC, I think the way that they do it is the most fair if you're going to have 12 teams or whatever make it. But the last thing you want to do is have your potential conference champion play 6 games and then end up just having just no one to pitch on the last game, and you hope you win it, and then you have to go into regional weekends with just an absolutely just exhausted team. So the AAC tournament, hopefully next year with more teams, it gets fixed a little bit. And even if you go to top 6 and have a play-in game and then a single elimination tournament, I think that's still better than what we have now.
All right, last few questions. Somebody says, how about this? Clemson wins the ACC tourney, gets the number 4 overall host. ECU wins the AAC tourney, gets the 13th seed. What a great super regional matchup if it played out. Yeah, that would be awesome. I think that would be great. Clemson, I know they're hot. I'm not scared of Clemson.
Very winnable.
I would be fine with Clemson over a lot of those potential national seeds. Not an easy game. Not an easy matchup, but I think winnable. All right. A-Win says, weather looking a little unsettled around noon Tuesday in Clearwater. Our game may be delayed. I haven't seen that.
Shocker.
Wouldn't be surprised, but it is Florida weather. You never know what you're going to get there. So that will change hour before first pitch. Kurt Collins says, Igo, was it you or someone else that came out and said the Mudcats have already said no regionals could be hosted at their place? Somebody else said that. I don't know who it was. But if that's the case, I don't know where Duke's going to host. I guess on their crappy on-campus stadium, if they even host. So
I don't think I'll have to worry about it.
Yeah.
What about Greensboro? Would that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm Duke, I don't want to do it further east.
Right.
Because if we end up there, then that's only going to be more difficult for them. So maybe you go west an hour and throw it in Greensboro.
Sam Anderson adds Campbell and Gardner-Webb play, and then Upstate and Winthrop play day 1.
Gardner-Webb beat Campbell earlier this year, right?
Yeah, I believe
they
so.
won one game. Played them kind of tough.
Yeah, Campbell won 4-3, 7-0, and then lost 2-4. So
go running Bulldogs.
Bulldog pro.
The problem with Campbell at a double elimination tournament, man, I just don't see them losing twice because they're just going to out-hit everybody.
Well, last year they lost a game early and then threw their best pitcher, like he pitched like 185 pitches that weekend because they knew they had to win it to get in because their RPI was bad.
Yeah. All right, CAA has their top 6 teams play in the tournament, which is smart from an RPI standpoint for teams like UNCW and Northwestern. Yeah. Again, CAA, smart call there. And Johnny Robertson, final question. Does anybody pay attention to the Coaches Bowl anymore? No.
Not in baseball.
The ECU baseball Twitter account.
That's it. That's the only one. Screw collegiate baseball. So, all right, we're at the end of the show. Last call for your predictions because we're about to make ours. Here's the deal. If you haven't made your prediction yet in the comment section on YouTube and Facebook, give us your pick on where you think ECU will be this postseason and what seed. If you think they're going to host, let us know that they're going to host and what overall national seed will they be, 1 through 16. If they're going to be on the road, where do you think they'll be on the road at? If you get it correct, you'll win 3 months free VIP if you leave it on YouTube or Facebook. And if Jonathan Wagner or Scott Lorbatcher get theirs correct, I will send them a T-shirt of their choosing. That's why I asked you guys earlier today. Not because I'm doing it for free.
247 polo. The official, we get a little bit nicer for sure.
All right, so let's go. Let's go. What do y'all think will happen in the conference tournament, and then your overall prediction where ECU is slotted next week? We'll start, Jonathan.
Oh wow,
it's a loaded question.
It is. I'm going to be the optimistic one this week because I'm going first. But I do believe ECU will not only win but sweep the AAC tournament, and I think it's going to be very tight to be there, even if that happens. But in the end, I think the resume, the 45-15, double champion, I think Buck Wild is in the chat.
Better late than never, Buck Wild.
We missed you, buddy. But so I just think that resume in the end is going to be too tough to deny. I think the committee will respect ECU. And I think they're going to host. I don't think they're going to be a high-end host, but I think they'll be I'll say number 15 host if they sweep. And I'll say my bonus prediction for the end because I've been holding this one for about a week now.
All right, Scott, we'll go to you. Sorry, I spaced out there reading Buck Wild.
Well, first I'll say that if you're putting your predictions in, make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and Facebook. Maybe that's the tiebreaker.
Yeah, we forgot to mention, if you're not subscribed, I will go in, check your profile, and if you're not subscribed, you will be eliminated. So subscribe, like, comment now.
And I think we win the conference tournament. I think we're playing too well not to right now. However, I'll have us as the 2 seed at number 15, West Virginia. I think West Virginia makes a run to the Big 12 championship game and plays Texas. And both of them get host spots, and we play Randy Mazey for right to advance to play Florida as the 2 seed.
So you're going 45 when ECU gets shafted out of a host?
It's time. We've got
let the records. That's what I wanted to do. I'm not gonna lie. That's what I want. That's what my brain told me to do, but I couldn't do it. I was going first. I had to start it off on the right foot.
And I'm always wrong, so that helps too, right?
There you go.
Right. I'm going ECU does not win the tournament. Sorry, guys. But I'm here for motivation. I think ECU gets to I think they lose the winner's bracket game to either Cincinnati or UCF. I say that, and in the back of my mind, I'm like, man, if they just win the first game, I think the pitching sets up so well they're not going to lose. So, I'm going to go South Florida beats ECU tomorrow. And then ECU fights back, eliminates whoever out of the loser's bracket, gets to Saturday, but then, goes 2-2 in the tournament. I think that would put them at 2-2. And then they're a 2 seed on the road at Virginia. And the Pirates, once again, it seems like Virginia and ECU always get in the postseason together. I think ECU draws Virginia, and the Pirates are going to win in Charlottesville again. Way too early prediction because they probably won't even end up there. But that is my pick. I don't even feel good about it. I don't feel good about ECU going anywhere. Maybe they will go to Auburn. Who knows? I mean, it just seems like there's not a slam. I like West Virginia, though, Scott. I feel like West Virginia host, ECU makes sense there. So
yeah, absolutely.
We'll see. All right, this has been fun. Oh, actually, we got a bonus prediction.
Yeah,
we all got to make a bonus prediction.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. I'm gonna start this one off, and I think I know I just predicted ECU to sweep the conference tournament, but when I'm predicting that, I do not think it's going to be blowouts by any standards. I think most games, if not all, are going to be close. And close enough to the fact that I think ECU will win 2 games this week via the walk-off. Whether it's a walk-off home run, walk-off base hit, walk-off walk, who knows? And I could go even further and say who's going to get one of those, but I'm going to just stop on my head. I was correct last week with my bonus prediction. Jake Hunter did not have a save going into the week, and I said one of our non-usual guys would pick a save up, and Jake Hunter did it. So I'm looking to go 2 in a row.
All right, Scott, do you have a bold prediction?
Well, I wish I would have predicted Jake Hunter to throw 96 last week because I don't think anybody saw that coming either. But, I'll go with Josh Moreland, most outstanding player of the AAC tournament, and Danny Bill on the all-tournament team as a pitcher. They both get the love they deserve.
All right, I am once again, I don't know where I'm going with this. I need to do better prep. Last week I predicted Lane Hoover to hit for the cycle. I don't even know if he got 4 hits all week. So I tell you what, last year in the tournament, Jacob Jenkins-Cowart made a sick diving catch and did a ball spike. I'm going to say that Jacob Jenkins-Cowart, I hate to even mention the word ball in the same sentence with him, but there will be a scenario where Jacob Jenkins-Cowart makes an outstanding play defensively or sliding into home or something, and he'll get up and he will either A, spike the ball or spike his batting glove or his little oven mitt that he runs with.
Hey, maybe his helmet.
He's going to spike something in this tournament after an exciting play, and that is my bold prediction for this week. I don't even know where that came from, but this is the only thing that came to mind. So the Hoover prediction didn't work out well. This probably won't either, but
I like it.
Here we go.
JJC spiking the Gatorade.
Literally and figuratively. If they go 0-2, he may need to really spike it.
On the bus.
Yeah, on the
Might
bus
be
ride
a different kind of spike.
Yeah. All right, fellas, this was awesome. I'll try and go through the comments here now that we're done and wrapping up the show and get everybody's written down so that way I don't forget it. If for somehow I missed your prediction for next week's show and you get it right, let me know, and I'll have to go back and double check. But I'll try and write them all down. That way I can verify whether we're cheating or not, or anybody's cheating. But Wags has to get to his Canes third period. Scott's got to get back to the Butner life. And I've got to post this podcast. So I appreciate you guys all season long. We're obviously still going to do this into the postseason, but it's been fun. To the commenters, to Wags, to Scott. Wait, to Scott. Scott.
There you
to
go.
Wags. And to the commenters. You guys can't see it. They are over there. Appreciate y'all, and we'll be back with you next week. Maybe we'll do something Friday on the Hoist the Color show, depending on what occurs with some guests. But we'll keep you guys updated on that. But at the least, we'll be back with you Monday for the post-bracket reveal. Wow, that'll be exciting. Y'all are good for next Monday, right? Even if it's a holiday?
Oh, I don't care. I'm there. Wouldn't miss it for the world, Steven.
That's right, yeah. I know you always try to get out of it, so all good. All right, we got to sign off. All right, it's been fun. This has been Hoist the Colors, the podcast. We'll be back with you next time.